Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss the government's latest scandals of waste and how well it highlights that far from Labour being costly for the government, as the Conservatives try and claim, when it comes to taxing the hell out of a population and spending it on nothing of value for the country or the public, you cannot beat a Conservative government for waste. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, standard practice for Conservatives, not just Boris Johnson, Conservatives in general, to tell two lies regarding financial matters. First, in government, that they would love to fund such noble projects as international development or education or healthcare or even just feeding and housing British citizens. But no, sorry, there's no magic money tree. They can only fund so much without raising taxes to the rafters, they say, which they then do anyway. The second is that Labour is the party of tax and spend. How often do we hear that? Tax and spend. I mean, it is certainly the party of spend. But because it spends on infrastructure, not corruption and vanity projects, Millennium Dome aside, but then that was already in the works from the previous Tory government, then we get a huge return from it. It is less spending and more investment. And these lies should be easy to refute. The idea that the government can't fund things that should be a given because of limited funds is instantly invalidated when you look at the eye-watering levels of waste. Like, I could talk about the billions of pounds, literally billions of pounds wasted, not spent, wasted on buying PPE that we didn't get. And when we did get it, well above the odds, because we didn't get the PPE all the time from actual PPE companies. And we now know that they prioritised friends and donors of Tory MPs who had no experience at all in the medical sector. When we got anything usable from these people, it was bought at a fantastic, well over the market rate price. When we didn't get what we ordered, as happened from time to time because the contracts were fulfilled by chimps, then we didn't claw the money back either. I could talk about the £37 billion budget. Budget, mind you, we haven't spent that much yet. People keep saying we've spent that. We haven't, although it is well over 20 billion spent now. But the £37 billion budget for a test and trace system that doesn't work. And that's not my assessment. That's not me saying, well, you compare it to this country, theirs works better. No, Parliament have said it doesn't actually work at all, even at a fundamental level. Not just that it's not as good as it should be, not just that it's not good enough for 37 billion quid's worth of spend, that it doesn't actually work. Other countries ran successful programmes for a fraction of the cost. And we're still shelling out £1 million a day, on consultants for this system that doesn't work. If they couldn't consult the system into a working state after a year and a half now, why are we still chucking £1 million a day at them? You do not get to claim that we had to cut international development or nick £20 a week off the lowest paid workers or let children in poverty actually go hungry or increase national insurance, again disproportionately hitting young workers, whilst also wasting public money on this grand scale. But the waste isn't confined to the once-in-a-century emergency of the coronavirus pandemic, because people let them off the hook there. Oh, give them some G's, Phil. It was all tough. They didn't really know what to do. No, they didn't know what to do. Other people knew what to do. They didn't. But this waste is everywhere and it's all the time. The two most recent breathtaking examples from the news are from the Foreign Office and the Department for Health and Social Care. Department for Health and Social Care first. Sajid Javid has ordered NHS England to pay private healthcare providers 270 million quid over the next few months. 270 million quid. Now, at first, the natural response would be to wag your fingers and say, well, if you hadn't spent a decade undermining the NHS, we wouldn't be reliant upon private healthcare at times of great stress to the system. We could just spend that money on getting more healthcare, more bang for our buck, you know. But you would say, we are where we are. Okay, fair enough. This is largely Jeremy Hunt and Matt Hancock. Okay, we've got a massive backlog. Even a good government cannot increase the capacity of the NHS back to where it needs to be overnight, no matter how much money you throw at it. Investment takes time to work, yes. But it's worse than that. This £270 million isn't being spent on healthcare in the private sector. It's not just that we're spending this on a lower value of healthcare than we'd have got for the same £270 million invested in public healthcare. We're not getting anything for it. What? Not a single patient's going to be treated with this 270 million quid. Not a single one. Not so much as an aspirin tablet do we get for this 270 million pounds. We're giving it to them for nothing. The head of NHS England, Amanda Pritchard, was reported to have strongly advised against this. Strongly advised against it. So this isn't like there is some reason, very highly technical reason, why these payments that might not make sense to a layman are actually necessary. Like the head of healthcare in England has said it's a poor use of public money. And she hasn't just said, look, I don't think this is the best use of public money. She's strongly advised against it. The payments are supposed to be like a retainer, so that if we need the extra capacity, we can use their facilities. But if this does happen, we still pay for it. That is estimated to cost another £500 million. The £270 million doesn't go towards it. That is just for nothing at all. I mean, if that's not waste, I don't know what is. Actually, this isn't even waste. This is more like theft, really. A known supporter of private healthcare and a known opponent of publicly funded healthcare giving public money from public healthcare to private providers without them having to provide any services in return. Then we come on to the Foreign Office. Now this one you may be more likely to know about. It's reached a wider range of the public. I'll discuss that in a moment. This represents less waste. It's Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, used £500,000 of public money to travel to a few destinations in Australia. Little aside before I get onto this, it's very likely that this has come out now. I would think. I've seen others express the view as well. Because right now Boris Johnson is fighting for his political life. His supporters are desperately trying to stop MPs voting him out of office. And the main thing that is keeping Boris Johnson in place right now is the fact that there is no obvious successor. If there were, he'd already be gone. So I would take this as a way of trying to trash the reputation of those who are being considered as his successor. I otherwise find the timing of the release of this information highly suspect. But anyway, on to the matter itself. And Conservatives are trying to claim that, well, why do we have these planes if they're not going to be used? My immediate response to this is that we also have nuclear weapons. I'm not sure I want that same logic applied here. And if that logic cannot be universally applied, then it cannot be applied to specific cases without further reasoning. As to the question is, what's the point in having the plane? Well, actually, I could first of all argue we shouldn't have the plane. It's highly inefficient. But you could argue, maybe, for emergencies, maybe like for any number of other things the government have access to in emergency. Maybe we use these expensive carbon-belching means of transport for emergencies. Like if you need to get the Foreign Secretary somewhere that's not well served with good transport links. We're talking about travel between the UK and Australia here, two of the most advanced economies with regular flights between them. I mean, does she have water extinguisher fights in her department every Friday or something? I mean, what's the point of having the fire extinguishers? We're not going to use them. And we haven't had a fire here for like ever. We might as well just have a water fight with them. The bottom line is that it represented a huge waste of money. I'm not suggesting that she should have travelled economy class or anything, although someone is in a minute. This is good. You know, I get that she would need to work whilst en route. Long flight, nothing wrong with getting a laptop out, so economy class probably not going to cover it. There was no need to pay £500,000. And that's just one example of her waste. She's also known for being a bit lavish with the old business lunches, all paid for with our taxes. And I don't just mean going on business lunches. I mean spending thousands on a lunch. Someone had this to say. This is good. You'll like this. You may have seen it already. Quote, "Every public sector worker should feel personal responsibility for the money they spend and the money they save. They should spend taxpayers' money with at least the care they could give to their own. This change of mindset would be reflected in everyday changes such as travelling by economy rather than business class." Now, who is it that said this? This was one Liz Truss MP. This was back in 2009 when she was an opposition MP, not a cabinet minister with the chance to blow a load of money that wasn't hers. Right now, the government are getting ready to deliver the biggest tax hike since the early 90s. And that previously massive tax hike was also from a Conservative government that mucked the economy up. Now, even under Jeremy Corbyn, Labour's spending plans, and they were big plans, did not include tax rises for anyone earning less than about 3 times the national average. Not a penny more would you have paid. And even then, it was only a few pounds extra, unless you were seriously raking it in. And seriously raking it in means millions. And he had big spending plans. Like I said, any Labour government does not dump the greater burden of taxation on ordinary workers. We know this from experience. The reason why Conservatives with a straight face will call them tax and spend is because he taxes their rich mates. The Conservatives, just like their brethren in the Republican Party in the USA, they tax the poorer people. They tax the poor in order to pay for the tax cuts to the rich. And they do not even have the redeeming quality of spending the much smaller tax revenue sensibly. Like, if you were of a right-wing disposition, but you also wanted to see an efficient government, you would expect to achieve low taxation by stimulating growth. It's the only way to achieve it. After all, if the economy, if the country rather, is making more money, there's more money coming in, then a particular rate of tax, whatever that percentage is, that particular rate of tax means you raise more actual tax revenues. It's quite simple. If you earn more money, you'll pay more in tax, even if the percentage remains the same. The reason that taxes are going up at the same time as spending is coming down, because remember, they're reining back all their spending promises, is that growth is low. Now that's odd, Phil. Boris Johnson, Conservatives, keep saying that our growth is really high. Fastest growing economy in the G7, they say. They have been known to tell the odd fib. Because if it were the case that our growth was really strong, why aren't they cutting taxes and raising spending? Because if our growth was really strong, then for that same rate of tax, the Treasury would be raking it in. That means we could afford some tax cuts and to spend the excess on extra projects, not cutting back on the ones already promised. Oh, we've got more money for extra projects. That's what you do with strong growth. We're doing the opposite. Because the Conservatives do not spend on infrastructure to stimulate growth, which then allows them to have strong public spending with low taxes. They spend on themselves. Tax and waste. That's how Labour should refer to the Tories. Tax and waste. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.